A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Waking Up to Win with myself, Stuart. And joining me today, I've got the one and only, the man who's regarded as the godfather of learning in real estate. He's got a history that spans over decades. He has traveled the journey, and he's now come and landed with us here at EXP to take us on this journey going forward. Who am I speaking about? Well, it's the one and only. It's our Chief Learning Officer, Bryon Ellington. Bryon, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Stuart. Good morning, everyone. I'm doing well, thank you. The godfather of real estate learning. I'm going to have to tell my wife that.
There we go. Well, you know what? It really has. When I start looking back over your journey in real estate and the impact that you've made with a number of companies and really set the platform for, if you think about it, learning for so many of them, getting those training programs into place, you could actually get that little badge and say you're the godfather of learning in real estate, because it really has done a ripple effect right across the globe. And I know I've even felt it in the previous. So for those of the people that don't know who Bryon is, Bryon, who are you? Where have you come from? And tell us this journey that I've afforded you the title of the godfather in real estate learning.
Awesome. So I'm here in Austin, Texas, with my beautiful wife, Marette, and my 4 children, who are ages 12, 11, 7, and 6. Let's see, got into real estate. Mom was a real estate agent growing up, so of course I swore I would never get into real estate. So I got into real estate, I was an agent, but spent 15 years at the corporate offices for Keller Williams. I was their chief products officer, chief learning officer, chief operating officer for their international franchising. And then went to a company called Realogy at the time, now called Anywhere. They own several brands, U.S. brands like Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA. So I've used about 7 of them, and they have company-owned stores too. I ran training and coaching for all of their brands, and then was also chief operating officer and chief development officer for Century 21 for a time.
Perfect.
And then about a year ago, I went out on my own and started talking with my old friends Michael Valdez and Leo and Glenn, and as soon as I could come on board, I came on board in October.
Fantastic. So there's this track record where you've got, how many years would you actually say collectively in that learning space, specifically in real estate?
20 plus. Yeah.
Perfect. So here we go. Godfather of real estate training, 20 plus years. There we go. So that's how we get the accolade that comes through. Now, you started, you're now generational coming into real estate, coming to real estate agent, don't want to do it. What got you into the training side? What was that little linchpin that moved you across to go from being a real estate agent into that learning and training space?
It's interesting. So I joke that I had some teachers growing up that kept me out of the morgue or jail or both. And so I knew I wanted to get back in terms of teaching. And so right out of college, I actually was a teacher for a while, and went from teaching into real estate. And so for me, that was the pathway. I always feel like I was in learning and development. It's real estate came second, and the ability to bring those two together for me was what really turned me on about my pathway.
Perfect. And I know for myself, I'm probably second generation in studying, learning, lecturing. I've done this for over 20 years in training, and when it's ingrained into you, it's something that you pull forward. So coming in as a teacher and then moving across, it's kind of inside of you. You just can't get rid of it. And when you're in real estate, you can't get rid of real estate. So what better way? Put the two together. If you reflect back over the last 20 years, has there been some highlights that you'd love to share with us? Something that made a pivot in the way you presented or created your learning path? Was there anything that really stood out for you that went, hey, you know what? I actually remember that moment. I remember that conversation, and this is what's led me to where I am right now.
Yeah, actually, a very pivotal moment in the United States. Our public school system is based on the idea that I'm going to tell you things, you memorize them, and then you regurgitate them back to me on a test so I can prove that you learned it. Then you're going to forget everything that you just learned because you got it out onto the test and go on about your day. And that was the sort of model for education that I was raised up in. As I sit there and I lecture and everybody else absorbs. I got an MBA in entrepreneurship, and what was interesting is that the program that I went through, the instructors weren't actually instructors. They were millionaires and billionaires who had started and sold companies. And so, for instance, the guy who taught me opportunities, right, this is an entrepreneurship training program, opportunities, business opportunities, was a guy by the name of Phil Siegel, who is the CEO of Austin Ventures, one of the largest VC firms here in Austin. The guy who taught me operations was Jack Long, who started Lone Star Overnight, which is the Texas version of DHL, if you're familiar. And so what was interesting about this all is you have these brilliant minds. I mean, these guys are highly, highly successful business people. And you would just want to sit there and pick their brain all day. They weren't allowed to make statements in the classroom. They could only ask questions. And this is a full MBA. I mean, you're learning accounting, how to do balance sheets, projections, and things like that. But they're not telling you anything. They're just asking you great questions. And they give you notes that you can go and learn from on your own. But it really kind of put the onus on you, the learner. And as the instructor, their job was simply to create that curiosity, create that sort of guided pathway for you to go figure out the answer to it. That was a very pivotal moment for me in terms of how learners learn and breaking out of the typical pathway that I had been brought up in.
No, fantastic. Well, that's the power of actual training. It's not about just spewing out the information. It's about asking the questions, and for you as the learner to actually give me the answer. Because if you give the right answer, it means, guess what? You've learned something. That's the most amazing thing about it. So that's actually amazing that you actually say that, because I actually went through a very, very similar path, and people weren't teaching me. They were asking me questions, and I had to self-discover. I had to learn what I learned, if you want to put it basically. Now, through this journey that you've had over 20 years, this doesn't just happen by accidents. You don't just wake up in the morning and go, right, this is what I'm going to do, and away you go. You've got to have some form of plan in place. And really, planning is so pivotal for real estate agents. Coaching real estate agents across the globe, I've come to see successful agents always have a plan. And the same comes with us with training. We have a plan. We prep, we plan, and then we know how we're going forward. How important, with you doing all this learning over the last 20 years, how important is business planning for real estate agents from what you've seen across multiple companies?
Yeah, it's pivotal. And I go through a specific process. In fact, I literally just did the process that I'm going to share in a little bit. I just did that with my team, the university team. And here's what I find. Whether you measure your business in units sold, or whether you measure it in volume, sales price volume, or whether you measure it in GCI, it doesn't matter. But let's just use sales volume. If you're a $3 million producing agent, you've sold homes that total $3 million in volume, let's just say. My experience is most agents who are 3 million want to be 6 million. Agents who are 5 million want to be 10 million, 10 million want to be 20, so on and so forth. And here's a weird way of thinking of it. If your business, however big it is, but let's just say it's 3 million. If it's 3 million today, what's interesting and a weird thing to think about is everything about your business then is designed to do exactly $3 million. And if you want that same business to do 6 million or 10 million, whatever the case might be, but let's just say you wanted to do 6, well, 3 things have to happen. When you think about your business, think about the lead generation systems you use, think about your service methodologies with your clients, all of that. 3 things have to happen. Number 1 is we need to change some of the existing things in our business today to be more in line with doing 6 million in production than 3. Number 2 is we need to add in things that a $6 million producer does, but that a $3 million producer doesn't do. And then the third thing is we have to stop doing those things that a $3 million producer does that's going to hold you back from becoming a $6 million producer. And the object, when I'm working with agents, and I've been a coach and coached both brokers and team leaders, the object is to identify what are those things, what needs to change, literally what needs to change in your business. There's business planning and there's strategic planning in my way of thinking of things. And business planning is this really long, elaborate, I'm going to sell this many homes and it's going to, 50% of them is going to be listings, 50% of them is going to be buyers, and blah, 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 blah. Great. But how are you going to make that happen? And that's where a strategic plan comes into place, because a strategic plan says, okay, here's the goal I want. Here's the things that have to change in my business to go achieve that. And I think that's the difference. When I coach somebody and let's just say their goal was to do 10 widgets and they come into a coaching session with me and they're doing 7 widgets, great. If they were doing 5 widgets 2 weeks ago, 6 widgets last week, and now they're doing 7, high five, we're going in the right direction, right? Now the question isn't how do we go from 7 to 10? The question is how do we go from 7 to 8 this week? We'll get to 10, we'll get there. But the question I'm going to ask is to go from 7 to 8, something needs to change. What is that? And usually that's going to be a function of your time, where you're spending it, and what you're doing during that time. And those are the tactical, practical areas where your plan, if it's not really addressing your current operations, your current way of behaving and how you're going to change that, where you're gonna miss out on the opportunities to really achieve your goals.
Absolutely. And that is such a critical thing to say, because so many agents just think, well, I want to sell 10 widgets. So let me just do the same type of activities every single time, because by doing those activities, I've got to selling 7 widgets. So I'm going to carry on doing the same thing. But it might be that the activities that you're doing is limiting you to 7 widgets. And then you try to get that at 8, and you're going, why am I not getting to 8? Why am I not being able to break that barrier to get to those 10 widgets? And I agree with you 100%. I've had that conversation with so many of my clients as well. It's what are those extra activities that you're going to do? That's different. There's always that craziness. Do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, you'll get the same result, but it's going to only be 7 widgets. So, Bryon, I know that you've prepped some business planning and some great concepts for us. Why don't you take it away and share with us your business planning process that you actually work with, so the agents can actually start to embrace that, start to work with that, because business planning is so critical going into 2024. You don't want to start 2024 and then say, right, now we're halfway through February and I know January is gone. Now I want to actually get into doing what I really want to do, which means your first quarter is down. So Bryon, over to yourself. Build your empire. Go for it.
Yeah. So I wanted to take you through a thought process, and this is not the answer, it's an answer as to how to go about building your strategic plan. This is a process I've used for decades. Everybody who's ever worked with me on my teams will recognize immediately this process and be able to create a strategic plan for their own way of working as well. This is going to be helpful whether you're a solo agent or a team leader. As a team leader, there's some added things that I'll share along the way, but we'll really focus on solo agents here in this conversation. Whenever I start with with strategic planning and what my year is going to look like, the first place I always start is me, selfishly. And there was this great exercise. I mentioned that MBA program I went through earlier. There's this great exercise that we went through as part of that program called 168 hours. If you're not familiar with the importance of that number, that's how many hours are in 7 calendar days. 24 times 7, 168 hours. That program that I mentioned was interesting because it was a full accredited MBA program, which is normally done in 2 years. This program was done in 1 year, and it was 100 hours a week, literally 100 hours a week in that program. By the way, my firstborn son was born 4 days before that program started. So my wife really loved me. What was interesting is because that program was 100 hours, they had us do this exercise to figure out like how we were going to structure our lives. And here's what's interesting. We all have goals that real estate is meant to drive, right? For most people, being a successful real estate agent, although there's greatness in doing that in and of itself, that's not the end goal, right? The reason why we're selling homes isn't so we get a commission check. It's what we want to go do with that commission check. And so the question is, what's important to you? Start there. And the interesting thing is, for anything that you answer, weirdly enough, there's going to be a time attached to that. I'm a father of 4. One of the things that's highly important to me is being a good father. Well, that takes time, right? Children spell Lovetime. And if you're not spending time, you're not going to be a good father. By the way, it doesn't matter what else you might say. You want to be involved in local community? Great. How much time are you going to do that? Your church, synagogue, mosque, whatever? Great. How much time are you going to give that each week? Your significant other? Are you going to do date nights, things of that nature? Whatever it is, there's going to be a time attached to that. And so the exercise, and we're not going to do this now. I'm going to give this to you and let you go take this for a dark, quiet room, maybe a glass of Chardonnay from Stellenbosch or something like that. Let you really kind of think about what this means for you. But list out the areas of your life that you want to develop in, that you have goals in, family, friends, spirituality, you see those there, whatever's important to you. And then the question is, how much time are you going to give that? And what's interesting is that I'm going to ask you to put work last, because that's what really is fueling what we're trying to accomplish in our life. And there's this interesting concept called Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law states simply that work will expand to the time we allow it. And I know you've all had that experience where you were just supposed to go accomplish something that really should have only taken you a short amount of time, maybe like a listing flyer or something like that, right? But that we weren't focused, we weren't really trying to get after it and get it done within a defined period of time. And so what would normally have taken you 15 minutes might have taken you an hour and 15 minutes. But when it comes to fitting things in, once you get clear about what you're trying to accomplish in life, that will really help you define, okay, what truly are my working hours? And during that time, then what do I need to get focused doing? What's interesting is when you start to do this, when you really literally put this on a piece of paper, you're going to find yourself negotiating with yourself for your time. You're going to say things to yourself like, well, do I really need 8 hours of sleep, or could I get away with 7? Trying to fit everything into your life that you want to fit in there. Can I eat standing up in the shower? Things like that. Trying to fit it all in. Well, listen, what this exercise is meant to do is 2 things. Number 1, make sure that you get what's important in your life on your calendar first, because that's where it needs to be. It needs to be on your calendar first. If you're like me anyways, if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. And I literally put anything that's important to me on my calendar, including time with my family, soccer games with my son, things of that nature. And what's interesting too, especially for you higher producing agents, is there's definite amount of time that it takes to service a client. Through skills and scripts and things of that nature, you can compact that. You can learn how to set expectations with the buyer, for example, so that you're not touring 25, 30 properties before you make an offer. But even with great skills and scripts, there's still a defined amount of time that you're going to have to spend with any given client. And what's interesting is when your goals, the things that you're trying to accomplish in life, which, by the way, not only have a time aspect to them, but usually a money aspect to them as well, when those goals get so big, what you're going to see is that you're not able to compact everything down into that 168 hours anymore. And that's your clear sign it might be time to bring somebody on and start thinking about developing a team, right? That's how I think about building a team. That's how I would think about if I needed to bring somebody into my world, where would it be? Looking at those time-intensive things that are not necessarily dollar productive things as well in my schedule. So this is an interesting exercise. I hope you do it. It's eye-opening, to be sure. Okay, once you're really clear about where you're going to spend your time and how do I go about setting my goals? Now, I use a process that I've cobbled together, and a lot of it is based on what I learned in this book. Team leaders, by the way, not a single team that I've led in the past, 10 years since I read this book, that I haven't used this book and actually reread it with my team. In fact, I've got my copy sitting right here because I just got done going through it again with my team. It's 270 pages, something like that, but really it's the first 100 pages that matter. It's the 4 disciplines of execution. It's an amazing book in terms of how you go about setting and achieving goals. So here are the 4 disciplines, quite succinctly as they lay it out. Focus on the wildly important, act on lead measures, keep a compelling scoreboard, and create a cadence of accountability. Now, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but then we're going to talk about how this relates to building your strategic plan. So discipline 1, determining what they call your WIG, your wildly important goal. And what they say is, don't ask what's most important, ask if everything else remained the same, what is the one thing that you could change that would have the greatest impact? And start with the verb and define it as going from X to Y by when on that thing. Now, for most of us as real estate agents, that X to Y by when is either going to be a unit number or maybe a volume number or maybe a GCI number, some marker in our business that lets us know our business is growing. So it might look like going from 40 deals to 60 deals by December 31st, 2024. Right? That would be a WIG. That would be a wildly important goal that we need to accomplish. And they say, keep it simple and focus on what, not how. Don't try to say, go from 40 to 60 units by December 31st by doing X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. We'll get to that. For your wildly important goal, though, just keep it simple. What is the measurement? What is the X to Y by when? Discipline 2, act on lead measures. Here's what's interesting. When I coach, we talk about results, but I don't focus on that. If I were coaching any of you and you were telling me, hey, I want to go from 40 deals to 60 deals, maybe on some sort of frequent basis, like monthly or quarterly, we're going to be looking at your unit count to make sure that the results are showing up. But that's not where we're going to spend the bulk of our time together. Where we're going to spend the bulk of our time is on lead measures, and that is the activities that are going to lead to those results. And so one of the things that I like to get really clear on with real estate agents is this is a very simple business. It is extremely simple. Now, there's millions of us that complicate the heck out of this business, but it is a really straightforward business. And I don't care what lead generation strategy you use. Here's the simplistic nature of our business. Our job is simply on a regular basis to get in front of a number of people such that through conversion formulas, that number of people is going to turn into the goal target that we have. So once you have your lead and lag measures, then it's time to keep a compelling scoreboard. And I don't know that this translates well for you all because you don't necessarily have American football, or maybe you follow it, I don't know. But in American football, there's an analogy I use, which is it's the very end of the game. You're on the other side of the field trying to get to your end zone. There's only 5 seconds left on the clock, so you've only got time for one more play. What's that going to be? What are you going to do? Now, an American audience unanimously is going to scream out, run the Hail Mary, run the Hail Mary. And the Hail Mary is simply the quarterback throws the ball up and hopes his receivers catch the ball, hopes defenders don't catch the ball, and hopes that their receivers go and score a touchdown, score points. But the problem is, I always say, wait a second, look up on the scoreboard, you're ahead. Now what play do you run? And to which everybody goes, don't throw the ball. Just down the ball, just run out the clock. My point is, knowing the score is important. If you don't know the score, you don't know what play to run. And when it comes to our business, what's interesting is those of you who've been in traditional brokerage offices before, you know that when you walk into a brokerage office, what do you see on the wall? Typically, you're going to see some sort of listing board, right? Which is great, but I would argue that's really a lag measure. If you truly wanted to encourage production, what you'd have instead are your activities. What are the activities that you need to do on a daily basis? The top agents I know track their activities. It's not about the results. The results will come. But when you talk about a scoreboard, here's what they say. It has to be simple, has to be visible, it should show both the lead and lag measures, and you have to immediately tell whether or not you're winning or losing. Context is key, right? Don't just tell me, hey, I made 9 contacts. Well, out of how many? How many were you supposed to make? Were you supposed to make 18? Or were you supposed to make 8 and you made 9? What is the context of your score? And this is important. Even as a solo agent, it is extremely important to understand your scoreboard, because once you know your conversion numbers, then you know how much activity you have to give in order to get your results. So tracking that on a scoreboard becomes immediately important. Number 4 is create canvas of accountability. And now, if you're a team, this is a great opportunity to bring your team together. If you're a solo individual, my question to you is, who could you find that's going to be there for you and allow you to have that kind of accountability relationship? Could be your sponsor, could be another agent or agents in your area that you're friendly with, but somebody that you can show up with on a weekly basis for no more than 30 minutes and go through, this is what I said I was going to accomplish last week in terms of activities, and here's what I did, and here's what I'm going to accomplish next week. Right? That's it. Just simple accountability, inviting accountability into your life. When you do that, you won't always hit 100%, but I guarantee you will hit more than you would have if you were just on your own. Sometimes we're really good at rationalizing our shortcomings in ways that other people are not going to rationalize. And having others, just the idea of having to go in front of others and share, here's what I said I was going to do, but here's what I actually did, is the impetus that makes us push just a little bit more to do just a little bit more activity. And so I'd highly encourage you to have that in your life in whatever form you can, whether it's paying a coach, by the way, which is an extremely great form of accountability when you have the right coach, or if it's just somebody in your area that you can really be accountable to. I want to jump in now into building a strategic plan. And I'm going to give you something that an old CEO of mine went to a leadership summit. I think it was actually Chick-fil-A's LeaderCast, if you're familiar with Chick-fil-A, and came back and had learned this and taught this to me and a few others. And so I started using this. And it's called the 13531 strategic plan. I don't know who invented it. I give them credit, but I don't know who it was. But it stands for this: 1 WIG, 3 strategies to achieve that WIG. Again, these are your battle WIGs. 5 tactics to achieve each strategy, and then 3 blockers that could impede your success, and 1 proactive measure you will use to prevent each blocker. That's it. By the way, this plan shouldn't be any more than 1 page. We don't want to do War and Peace here. We're looking for a very simple, straightforward, here's what I'm going to go do this year in my business in order to achieve my goals. So let's jump in. 1 week, again, that X to Y by when. What are we going to do in our business? And what are the right metrics that would tell us that we're succeeding this coming year? And again, for most agents, that's going to be either units, GCI, or volume, whichever you like. And how are we going to set that goal? And being realistic about what's likely to occur and what's going to be needed in order to make that occur. And here's another thing too. Does our buy when need to be sooner than December 31st in order to achieve our war wig? Sometimes it does. When we talk about the metrics that lead up to our battle wig, does that need to happen sooner in the year? Underneath that, we're going to be looking at 3 strategies to achieve. These are going to be our battle wigs. Now, one thing here, if you have a large team, you might have 4 strategies, but I'm going to encourage you to really limit it to 3. We don't want to, as they say, boil the ocean, right? We want to really stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish. What's interesting is going, from whatever level you're currently at to whatever level you want to be at, usually doesn't involve a whole lot of change in your business. It's going to involve some change. And so we don't really need to have 15 strategies here. 3 strategies will typically accomplish it. Those strategies must level up to that wig. And they also will have their own lead and lag measures to let us know whether or not we're on track to accomplish that strategy. As we're thinking through this, keep thinking, each strategy is going to have tactics. Is this truly a strategy? Is this truly a battle wig that I need to accomplish the war wig? Or is this really just a small tactic within some other larger strategy? Keep asking yourself, how will I know if that strategy has been accomplished? How will I know? Is it binary? Either it did get done or it didn't get done? Or is there some qualitative or quantitative metric that goes along with knowing that strategy got accomplished? The clearer you can be about that, the more likely you are to be able to put it onto your scoreboard and therefore track it and get it done. And then what's that lead metric? Underneath each strategy, we're going to have 5 tactics. And these are the 5 things that must be accomplished in order to accomplish that battle wig. And again, that battle wig must be accomplished in order to achieve the war wig. When you have a team, you may have drivers for these individual tactics as well. Also, too, when you have a team, be careful of pet projects. You'll see people, trying to throw in a tactic that has nothing to do with that battle wig, but it's just something they've always wanted to do. Oh, it's going to be so cool. Be careful of that. If it doesn't level up to the goals in sequence, then I would encourage you to either not do that or wait until the other things have been accomplished. Then your team member earns the right to be able to work on whatever pet project. Now, when you think about your tactics, again, sometimes there's going to be people who are involved in it. You may want to hire somebody to help with, your listing packages, right? So if you're going to start offering photography, you need to be talking to a photographer, a videographer, a drone videographer, whatever the case might be. There's going to be people who are part of your plan, whether they know it or not. And so the key would be to make sure that they know you were part of my plan. And here's how I need you to help, and can you do it in the time frame that I need you to do it in order to accomplish my goals? When I do this process, when I go through and I build my strategic plans for whatever team I'm working with, the first thing I do is I sit down and I draft out what I'm going to do. The next thing I do is I go to my lieutenants, my right-hand people, right, the leaders within my organization. And I say, here's my thoughts about what we need to go accomplish and how. What are your thoughts? and I get them to share in. And then once we've done that, we take the corrected document and we go to the rest of the team, and same thing. Here are our thoughts. What are your thoughts? And again, add, edit, delete. Tell me what you think. What I get out of that, team leaders, two things. First is brilliance. I don't care how smart you are. There's always going to be an idea you didn't think of that comes out of that discussion that is absolutely brilliant and is absolutely right and will make the difference as to whether or not you achieve your goals. The second thing I get, and probably just as important, is buy-in, commitment. I had one of my mentors, this guy, Ed Perry, who had started and sold a bunch of businesses. And what he said was, there are going to be times in business when you disagree on the direction your partner wants to take. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can either disagree and quit, or you can disagree and commit. Anything in between is called sabotage. And that really resonated with me. And I share that with my teams when we go through this process. We're going to build out our strategic plan. At the very end, I literally ask them all, once we've given our input and agreed that this is what we should be doing, I ask them all to sign a document. In fact, we're going to be doing that as a team. The document that we've created for our strategic plan, we're going to be doing that this very week, signing that document as our form of commitment to it. So I thought that might be interesting for you team leaders, but that's how I go about, again, an answer, not the answer. That's how I do my strategic planning with my team.
And it's great that you're going through this particular process, because for myself as a coach, I use this exact process that we go through. It does come with many, many names. I love the last part about it, 13531. I'm very familiar with 135, GPS, all of these different acronyms that come into it, and it follows the exact same flow and process, and it's extremely powerful. A key point that I wanted to really bring up for the people that are listening in here is it sounds like a lot of information, but it's all on one page. That's the critical component here. It's all on one page, not over 55 different documents spread across your desk.
Yeah, so a few details. And to your point about it being a one-page document, I used to have a mentor, Jeff Sandifer, who would stop people in the middle of their sentence and say, I think what you're saying is really smart, but I don't know because it might be too smart. Could you explain that to a 6-year-old so I really understand what you're saying? And I always think about that when I think about this document. This document should be such that anybody around you, your sponsor, your accountability partner, your coach, team members, they should be able to pick this up and immediately understand what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to go do it. It should not be esoteric. It should not be war and peace in length. It should be very straightforward and to the point. And what I find is when strategic plans don't have clarity, it's because the person that's trying to accomplish it hasn't really nailed down in their mind how they're actually going to go achieve their goal. It's just a bunch of loose ideas. And I think this process, there was a World War II general who said, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Mike Tyson, former heavyweight champion of the world, said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. This document is a living document, right? You're rarely going to end the year just having every single thing checked off and nothing modified on this kind of document. And that's where that scoreboard process really comes into account. There's going to be those things that you have to front end load. So for example, going back to what I was saying before, this business is really a business of getting into contacts, right? Getting in front of people who will eventually buy or sell with you. The question is, at what pace will they buy or sell? And so you may need to front load the number of contacts that you need to be working in order to achieve your goal. The one thing that I'll leave on is this. I heard a gentleman say the other day that discipline is the ultimate form of self-love. And And in our business, typically, if I met a ready, willing, and able client today, it's going to be around about 100 days before the deal closes and I get that commission check, right? And so what's interesting here, and I think you kind of touched on it at the top, Stuart, is that most people do business planning where they're going to start their year January 1st. Well, by January 1st, the year's already started. 2024, for all intents and purposes, started August 1st. The results you're going to see in 2024, they started, October 1st of this year, right? 3 months out. And so for us, we have to kind of think forward to our future self, and how's that person going to feel about today you and the choices that you make, because they are absolutely going to impact you in 100 days, period, or whatever your cycle is. And so really having that sort of self-love to do the things. And if you've not read the book Atomic Habits, man, I really highly recommend it. One of the things he says in terms of creating a new habit is, are you the kind of person who goes to the gym? Is that how you define yourself? Because if you define yourself as, I'm a person who goes to the gym, when life happens and I can't go spend an hour in the gym, I can only spend 30 minutes. Well, guess what I'm doing? I'm going to go spend 30 minutes in the gym. The same is true. Are you the kind of agent who lead generates? Are you the kind of business owner who's focused on growing your business? Because if you are, when life happens, even if you don't have the 3 hours to go generate your leads, if all you have is an hour, you're still going to use it accordingly. So define yourself, define who you are as a person in your mind, and let that guide your actions. All right. Well, thanks for letting me come play, Stuart. I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And, Bryon, it's always an honor to have you onto this particular call, sharing your years of wisdom. Remember, guys, this is the godfather of real estate. What he shares with you takes it to that high level, but I can tell you now, it works. It really works. It even comes through in the trainings that I give. And I can tell you a lot of what I train here in South Africa actually comes from content that Bryon was involved with and putting together many years ago. So it is absolutely an honor and pleasure to have this particular discussion with yourself. And I think the haircut really, it holds true. This is where we are into this game. We are so committed that we actually take it right down to the bare skin to give it through. Bryon, again, thank you so much for coming onto this call. It's always been an honor and pleasure for you to come through. From myself, this is Waking Up to Win with Stuart. It's been an absolute honor to have Bryon Ellington, the Chief Learning Officer of EXP Realty, on this particular call. My final thought for everybody: remember, life is a question. The way you live it is the answer. You have a fantastic day further. I'll look forward to chatting to you soon. Cheers for now.